My name is Hannah Bargawi. I'm a lecturer in the economics department. I teach two courses primarily, one in gender economics for undergraduate students and also a course in development economics for undergraduate students and students studying towards a diploma in economics. Yes, I've made use of the LTD quite frequently to refer my students, particularly those who perhaps don't have English as their first language, but also students that are not used to the system in the UK, the educational system, and how to write an essay, structure an essay, but also for presentations, when students are preparing for their first presentations, for tutorials. I often send them to the LTD to just familiarise themselves with how to do that. Similarly also for essays, putting together bibliography, how to cite academically. For a lot of students, even if they have done A-levels in this country, they may not be familiar with academic standards of how to do things. In terms of seeing an improvement in use of the LTD by my students, it's frequently difficult to assess that as a lecturer because there's a gap between one assignment and the next, which is an assignment in term one at the end of term one and the second at the end of term two. Often there is an improvement between the two, but there's only those 2 points to really compare. However, students themselves have often come back to me to say how useful they've found the tools that they've used. And similarly, tutors often do comment on the improvement in presentations, and I think often students also learn from each other as their studies progress. So watching other people's presentations and also hearing their experiences of using the LTD has helped them a great deal. In relation to what suggestions I might have for other academics in finding and identifying students that could use the services of the LTD, I find it hard to encourage students to come to office hours. Quite frequently they will come in their droves just before the essay deadline. And actually in those times I have suggested to students, if they've got questions around how to do a bibliography, etc., to use those services. One of the things I do is on my BLE site for the courses that I teach, I have links to the LTD and have a short blurb explaining what the LTD service might offer for them. Often I also have a really quick session at the beginning of the term in relation to their essays, what's expected of them, and in that I suggest that they might want to visit the LTD, make use of their services and also pick up the leaflets that are available outside the LTD. Quite often I think that's enough for students just to be able to pick up a leaflet which gives them details of how to cite something is quite useful. So it's really just reminding students regularly of those things as well. Quite often they may not be thinking of it at the beginning of term, but once you remind them again shortly before the essay deadline, they may well make use of those services then. Okay, so in terms of feedback on the assignments that students do, we have one essay that students have a choice of 2 essay questions to answer on. So they will submit that via Turnitin and all feedback will be provided via Turnitin. I generally read through the essay first and provide some general comments in the general comment section. I then will go back and particularly I found that actually some of the keywords that Turnitin has on offer, so whether it's improper citation or awkward phrasing, the terms that it uses on the side are quite useful to just drag in and highlight certain sections. I try and do that as much as possible. It can be quite time consuming, I have found. Having done this course now a couple of years, particularly in my development economics courses, I find that students have the same issues come up again and again. So rather than just constantly putting in improper citation, for example, I might do it once or twice and then put it in the general comments. And then one thing I found quite useful is actually to provide the students' feedback in the lecture as well. So in person, just say, in general, this was my impression of what you all took from the lecture and how you answered your essay questions. This was a general theme emerging, was the fact that a lot of you need to work on your bibliographies and on citing things correctly, and this is what I find often, particularly with first year students, but also the second year course that I teach, about the very first essay, quite often there are still issues there around citing things correctly. So I tend to give a little bit of general feedback then in the lecture as well, and in relation to the essay question itself. And I find students respond to that quite well. I think often students find it difficult to engage immediately with the comments that they get on their essay. And I would suggest to students to make sure you do that. You know, it's really important to read the feedback you get, because that's the only way you're going to be able to improve for your next essay. And there's a reason why the things have been written there. And if you don't understand them, then go back to the person that's marked the essay and to your course lecturer and ask exactly what they mean. And that's something that I find students, it's very frustrating for us as lecturers, but often students you feel haven't properly read or understood the comments that they've been provided with, and as a result make the same mistakes again, and that's very disheartening as a lecturer. So for students wanting to improve and make the most of their studies here, I think there's lots of things you can do. I think make sure you make the most of your lecturer's time at the time that they make themselves available. So go to their office hours, talk to them well in advance of your deadlines for your essays, for example. Also work together with your fellow students. You know, if you're working on a similar essay topic, on presentations, take advantage of that. Form little groups if you can. Obviously make use of all the other services that SOAS offers, and that includes the LTD, but also if you are struggling with your studies, there's really good services to support you, and if you can make sure you visit those and assess and access those early on rather than waiting to the last moment. And similarly when it comes to the faculty office, you know, if you're having problems, if there's a reason why you're not progressing with your studies as you wish, make sure you talk to them and get the support that is on offer here and make the most of that. I guess from a perspective as a lecturer, for me, the one thing I would say is come prepared for your classes. You know, people these days are paying a lot of money to go to university, and it's a shame if you're not making the most of that. And these days, we have got really good services such as the BLE, where things are posted online. You can access most of journal articles online. There's no need to go to the library physically and find that textbook, at least not all the time. So make sure you make the most of those resources, come prepared, having read something in advance. Make sure you ask questions in class if you don't understand something. You know, there's lots of opportunities to engage with academics here. And often I think the best people are the tutors, your first point of contact in a tutorial, and then take it from there. So make the most of your time, really, and the people here. In terms of what I like about SOAS and what's great about being a lecturer here, I think it's such a multicultural environment. It's a real melting pot of people. I think as an academic, I've over the last couple of years really felt a change in that people are much more open now and much more willing to talk to each other and use new resources that we have available. I know I was a student here myself, so I know what it was like a long time ago, and I think since then things have progressed quite far, and we make use of the resources we have, whether it's Moodle and BLE, and I hope students can tell that too, that actually you have a lot of enthused individuals that are very enthusiastic about the regions and the topics they work on, but also about the resources we have here.